Okay guys, so today we're going to be doing our second assessment on cold environments and tropical rainforests. So first of all, can you put your name on your exam paper please? If you could put your class teacher, so I'm just going to put KP for Miss Pepin's class. Now don't forget, your teacher will tell you your mark. They will work out a percentage and then eventually we work out some grade boundaries for you. If we move on down through the paper very quickly, your teacher will summarise specific points in the paper of things you did well and specific points in the paper of areas for improvement. Do take this on board when they do feedback to you, because at the end of the day it will improve your mark. So let's look at the instructions then. So you're going to use blue ink or black ballpoint pen. We say black as obviously now all exam papers get scanned in and therefore blue ink doesn't show up, so you will be required to use a black pen. So try and get into the habit now, okay? You're going to answer all the questions in this test. You must answer all the questions in the spaces provided, otherwise you don't get the marks. Cross through any work you do not want to be marked, for example 2 lines, just so it's neat. That way, if what you have written down is correct, your teacher and the examiners will still give you credit for it. So just cross through it and make sure that they can still see it. The marks for the questions are shown in brackets by each question. The total number of marks available for this particular paper is 40 marks. And in this particular paper, spelling, punctuation and grammar will be assessed in questions 10 and question 11. So remember that. Here, your teacher will break down each question for you when you have answered each question, and they will decide if you've got red, which therefore means obviously you need to work on those questions, amber, which means you probably needed to include maybe a bit more detail and just perfect your answers, and green would mean that obviously the teacher's very happy with the amount of marks you got for each question. This is basically just to give you an overview of what you need to work on later on. Okay, so let's turn the page and let's get started. When we open our paper, the first thing we see is not actually a question, it's a figure. So we've got to study figure 1. Figure 1 is below, as it says figure 1 here. It's a world map showing some large-scale global ecosystems. So if we have a look at the key, we know that hot deserts is kind of like this greyish colour. Tropical rainforest is more of these straight lines. Tundra is obviously your darker shaded areas, and polar is your kind of diagonal lines. Always use the key provided, okay? So if we look at question 1, so question 1, we've got to use figure 1, so figure 1 is above you. Which one being the optimum word, of the following statements is correct? Now you're going to circle the correct answer. It is worth 1 mark. So is it A, most areas of tundra are found on the edges of land masses? Is it B, the largest polar area is found north of the equator? Now think north, south, east, west. Is it C, there are no areas of tundra south of the equator? Refer to your compass again. Or is it D, there are no polar areas south of the Tropic of Capricorn? So if we use our figure, you can see the Tropic of Capricorn is here. Think about the ecosystem you've been asked about. So it's always focusing on tundra and polar and tundra and polar. So obviously we're after these two. So think about where these two are specifically on the figure above. Answer that question. Okay, if we move on to question 2. Now question 2, you've got to describe the distribution. Distribution solely means pattern of the tundra ecosystem. So it doesn't matter if you have not learned about a tundra ecosystem, but this is the one they want you to focus on, shown in figure 1. So we're referring back to figure 1. We can see that tundra is this darker shaded area using our key. So obviously we can see whereabouts it is on the figure. So if we go back to question 2, it's worth 2 marks. Because it's a describe type question, we need to give 2 points. You might know them as two facts. Think about locational knowledge and think about compass directions. Think about country examples. This will prove to the examiner that you can demonstrate geographical knowledge. Have a go at answering that question. Okay, so question 3. Which one of the following statements describes the climate of a tundra environment? So again, tundra being the optimum word. Remember, this test is on cold environments, so you should have learnt what the climate, thinking about temperature and thinking about precipitation, is like. So we're going to circle the correct answer. Circle it. 1 mark. So is it A? Temperature below 0 degrees Celsius, so degrees Celsius, for long periods of time. Is it B? Mild temperatures for long periods of time. Is it C? A wide range, so think wide, of temperatures varying for long periods of time. Or is it D? Temperatures at or below 0 degrees Celsius for long periods of time. Okay, question 4. So this question is asking us to outline 1 possible challenge to development in cold environments. So we're thinking about cold environments, so think about the previous question, think about temperature, think about precipitation. Now, because we're outlining and it's worth 2 marks, this time we need to give 1 point to get the first mark. And then in order to get the second mark, you need to say very briefly why. So why is it a challenge to develop in cold environments? So remember, a challenge is some kind of difficulty that's experienced. Think about cold being your optimum word. Moving on to question 5. We're going to suggest this time. Now, suggest just solely means you providing an answer. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be right. So we're suggesting 1 economic. So economic is referring to money. An economic activity that is conducted in cold environments. So again, we're thinking of cold environments because this assessment is on cold environments. Now again, it's worth 2 marks. Now, because it's a suggest type question, 1 point will equal your first mark. So obviously you suggesting 1 economic activity. Second mark would be how it is conducted. So how does it work, if you like? So 1 mark for the actual economic activity itself, so something to do with them making money. And the second point for how it is conducted. Have a go at answer this question. Now, we've got to study figure 2. So this is obviously very clearly figure 2 below us, which shows a number of animals found in cold environments. So you don't need to know specifically what the animals are. I hope everyone can tell me what this animal is and roughly what this animal is. You might not know the specific names of them, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so don't worry about that if you come across an animal that you have no idea what it is. So let's look at the question. So question 6, you've got to use figure 2. So we know that figure 2 is above us. We've got to describe this time and explain the features of the animals shown. So 6 marks. So we've got to relate back to the figure, and it says animals. They're very, very subtle sometimes with their plural, so you must use more than 1. So you need to use more than 1 animal example. So we could refer to this one, hopefully everyone knows what it is, but I'm just in case it is a polar bear. We know that this is some type of rabbit. So if we call this maybe a hare, just to be on the safe side. This to me looks like some kind of deer or some kind of antelope. So maybe a deer. And obviously this is a bird of some kind, so we can just refer to this as a bird. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to know exactly what the animal's name is. So in order to get 6 marks then, because this is a describe and explain type question, it's a level marked answer. So if we break the question down, to get a level 1 type answer, it's 1 to 2 marks, and it means your answer is quite basic. So you provide limited knowledge, unfortunately. And to be honest, if it's asking you to explain, thinking about where these animals in figure 2 come from, very clearly it's wanting you to refer to what environment they actually live in. It seems as this whole topic is on cold environments. It's probably going to be asking you for the ecosystem. Hint, hint. To get level 2, on the other hand, that would be 3 to 4 marks. It very clearly means that your answer is clear, so you provide some detail on the animals. So again, we're thinking about features of these animals, so think claws, think about their sense of smell, think about their colour, how they move around. So very clearly it wants you to link these features, so describe them, but to explain why they have them. Remember, explain again means why. Give reason. In order to get a level 3 on this answer, which would be 5 to 6 marks, your answer must be detailed. For your answer to be detailed, you need to apply detailed amounts of knowledge of the environment these animals live in, the ecosystem they live in, and link their specific features back to the environment. So really, you're thinking about how each of these individual animals survives in this particular type of ecosystem. Now, not only do you need to give detail for a level 3 type of answer, but your answer must be balanced. Now remember, we said up here that you must relate to more than one animal. So balance would be you having more than one animal. Have a go at answering this question. Okay, so moving on, so we're going to study figure 3. As you can see, figure 3 is below us, which shows a climate graph for Baker Lake, Canada. Now we can see on the graph that along the bottom there's 12, so these must be our months of the year. Now this climate graph is a bit different to a climate graph you've seen previously, so sometimes they do it to kind of make you have a think about what it's showing. So because this side is in millimetres, think about what this axis is for. So I'm going to tell you it's for precipitation, because precipitation is always measured in millimetres. So if millimetres is on this side, and that measures precipitation, we've got to think about what degrees is measured for, and that's temperature. So now we've picked apart the figure, so we know that temperature's on this side, precipitation's on this side. Now we've got to look at the actual graph. So we can see here that we've got a line starting at minus 30. It's increasing and then decreasing. There's no numbers here. Could this be the line for temperature? Then we've got some bars that obviously are different sizes, tend to start at 0 and obviously increasing in some areas. Could this be precipitation? So let's have a look at the following questions then. So question 7, which month of the year, so again look at the bottom axis here, can't make it any more clear for you. Which month of the year received the highest amount of precipitation? Remember that precipitation is measured in millimetres. So it's worth 1 mark. So there you go, 1 mark probably means that there's only one particular answer. If we move on to question 8, we've got to state. So state is just another word for basically saying say. The number of months. Now again, plural here, months, so potentially a clue that there is more than one, with a temperature below 0 degrees. 1 mark. So don't forget this plural. So this time it's a bit different. So we know the question's 1 mark, but think about, is it one answer or are they looking for more than one answer to allow you to get this 1 mark? If you only write one answer, because it's asking for months, you will not get that mark. So use the graph above, the climate graph, and obviously look at temperature below 0 degrees, so below this line. Okay, if we move on to question 9, so we've got to use figure 3, again figure 3 is above us. We've got to describe this time, so describe simply means to say what you see. Now for saying what we see, we know that we've got to look at the climate of Baker Lake, Canada, and this time it's worth 3 marks. So this particular question, if it's a describe question, it's 3 marks, which means that we've got to give 3 points, 3 different, cannot stress the word different, can't repeat yourself, 3 different points. So we've got to describe, to say what you see. So using the climate graph above, we've got to describe 3 things about the climate of Baker Lake, Canada. So that could be temperature, it could be precipitation, it could be a simple descriptive point to see that it increases or decreases at a certain time. You could give temperature range. So 3 isolated points, 3 points on their own. Have a go at answering this question. Okay, so question 10. Now on the exam paper, they actually give you a choice for a hot desert or cold environment. Now I've crossed out on the exam paper hot desert because we don't learn about hot deserts, okay? We focus on cold environments. So always disregard this part of the question and we're going to talk about cold environments. So for a cold environment you've studied, to what extent does that environment provide both opportunities and challenges for development? So we're going to break it down. So first of all, what's the command word? So to what extent is our command word? So to what extent means that they want you to provide some arguments as well as some kind of decision, okay, or some kind of judgment. So in this question, you must make an argument or provide a range of arguments, so more than one, and make a decision or a judgment. So to what extent does the environment, so remember we're talking about the cold environment, provide both? So think both means you've got to give a balanced answer. Opportunities and challenges for development. So think about what development means. And it's worth 9 marks. Now, if you've seen a previous blog post on my website or in class, we related some scales to this question, looking at opportunities and challenges. So we're making a judgment based on what we think. So in order to get 9 marks, that would be a level 3 type answer. You provide detail. So you give knowledge of cold environments. So knowledge of opportunities in a cold environment, opportunities and challenges in a cold environment. You've got to provide a range of arguments. So a range of opportunities, so range means more than one. You've got to give a range of challenges, again, more than one. That would make up your AO1 and AO2 marks of the question. However, for a 9-mark question, especially to what extent question, you have AO3 marks available within these 9 marks as well. And what that means is you have to actually apply knowledge. So knowledge of opportunities in cold environments and challenges of cold environments. And what you've got to do is you've got to apply that knowledge and demonstrate your understanding. So you've got to prove to the examiner, the person who's marking your paper, that you know what you're talking about. And you've got to use your knowledge, so using your balance, remember our scale, and you have got to weigh up. Get it? Scale, weigh. I found it funny. Your argument. And therefore, if you're weighing up your argument, so making a decision using your scale, so is it opportunities that you think is better? Is it challenges in cold environments is better? And therefore, you are also going to make some type of decision. So if you think that opportunities outweigh the challenges, you're going to make some type of judgment. So do you think challenges override opportunities, or are you in the middle, equally weighted? But you must back up your answer with a reason and say why. So 9 marks, level 3, detail. We've got to give knowledge, a range of information, so more than one opportunity and more than one challenge. That would be AO1 and AO2. For AO3, we've got to apply knowledge, we've got to demonstrate understanding, we've got to weigh up your argument, therefore make a decision, make a judgment, tell the examiner why you came to that decision, even if it's just a sentence. Now the one thing we're missing to get 9 out of 9 links back to AO1 and links back to the question. And considering we're talking about a cold environment you have studied, you have to prove that you are talking about somewhere you have studied. So you have to give a location. So give a location of the place you studied. Okay, so as long as it's a cold environment, as long as you're providing opportunities in your answer and challenges in your answer, making a judgment, you will get 9 marks. Detail is key. Have a go at answering this question. Okay, so the last question in this exam paper is actually from a previous exam paper you have sat on tropical rainforests. Now, I'm not actually going to go through this question because if you go on my YouTube channel, you will find this video and you can skip to the end, which talks you through this particular question again. I'll put the link below in the comments section. Okay, so last thing before we wrap this up. So for question 10 and question 11, you have SPAG marks available. So SPAG is worth 3 marks. Now, some students find this really challenging, SPAG, but in order to get 3 SPAG marks, you've got to give consistent accuracy with your spelling. So just take your time with your spelling. You've got to use your grammar correctly, so full stops, capital letters. But the most important thing is geographical words. So for cold environments, maybe at the side of the exam paper, okay, or even at the top of the exam paper, write out a little list. So we've got like cold environments for one. You know, you could have environment, you could have the word development. And if, when you're writing your question, you tick these off, however many times you use them, you're demonstrating that you're using a very wide range of geographical words. Now, because this is in question 10 and question 11, if, for example, you're not consistent with using your keywords in question 10, but you are consistent with using your words in question 11, the examiner might not give you 3 marks, they might give you 2, they might give you 1. So try and keep a list and tick them off as you go. Okay, now really a wide range of geographical words would probably be anything between 5 to 7 words. But to be honest, 7 plus would convince the examiner more than anything. Okay, so for question 10 and 11 exam paper, try and use a range of geographical words. Thanks for watching, guys, and good luck with your assessment.